Day After Signal is a podcast about staying grounded when the crisis hits. It was built for moments like this, when reality shifts, when truth feels engineered, when chaos drowns out clarity. In those moments, you don't need certainty, you need a framework. This show builds one, a critical thought learning frame to keep you anchored, clear, and intentional, even when reality fractures. Today, we're talking about anchors, not just the ones that keep ships from drifting, but the ones that keep us from unraveling when the familiar gives away. Let's start with the literal anchor. It's easy to think of it as just a heavy chunk of metal dropped in the sea, but it's more than that. The earliest anchors were just rocks, primitive, simple, but they worked. Later, sailors added wooden arms and lead wedges and lead weights. They weren't chasing perfection, they were chasing stability. And that's the first parallel. Your anchor doesn't need to be flawless, it just has to hold. In deep water, anchoring gets tricky. You need 5 to 7 times the depth in chain length. It's not just the anchor, it's the slack, the weight, and the angle. That's how it digs in. And maybe that's how we hold on too, not by brute force, but by giving ourselves enough slack to settle, enough weight in values, in relationships, in purpose to keep us grounded. There's a moment, maybe you've lived it, when the ground gives way, not physically but existentially, when the beliefs you held, the systems you trust, and the story you told yourself about who you are start to dissolve. A pandemic, a death of a friend or family member, a job loss, a betrayal, a love lost, an unwanted disclosure. When that moment comes, you need an anchor, not a map, not a theory, an anchor. But here's the truth, an anchor isn't certainty. It's not knowing for sure. An anchor is identity. Who are you when everything else is up for negotiation? That's what we're going to explore today, because if you wait to build your anchor until the storm hits, it might be too late. You need to know who you are now. Ships often carry 2 anchors, not because they expect to lose one, but because they might. So they prepare, they build redundancy, they build before the storm. So ask yourself, what held you in place last time? Was it a person, a belief, a ritual? And what are you building now, quietly, patiently, so that when the ground gives way, again, you don't drift? Anchors don't stop the storm. They don't guarantee safety, but they give you a chance to stay, to hold, to wait it out. Socrates said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." When you're learning to think critically under pressure, the first step isn't gathering more data, it's anchoring yourself in purpose. Why are you here? What do you believe matters? Before you can learn from failure or a setback, you have to understand what you're aiming toward. As Mike Tyson once said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. You need a reason to get back up. I invite you to do some reflection. What are the things you keep doing in your life that don't work? What beliefs about yourself or the world have gone unexamined? Are you learning anything from what's not working? That's where purpose becomes your compass. Purpose gives structure to suffering, meaning to repetition, and resilience when nothing else makes sense. But to anchor yourself in purpose, you need honesty. You need to identify the behaviors that sabotage your growth and recognize the payoffs you're getting from them. That's the hard part, because every self-sabotaging habit pays you back somehow. Even laziness, even anger, even scrolling until 2 a.m. The story of the processionary caterpillar can give us an insight. A noted French naturalist studied this unique insect in great detail. What makes this caterpillar special is its instinct to follow in lockstep to the caterpillar in front of it. This behavior not only gives the caterpillar its name, but it creates a situation that is deadly. This unusual behavior was demonstrated with a simple experiment. He took a flower pot and placed a number of caterpillars in single file around the circumference of the pot's rim. Each caterpillar's head touched the caterpillar in front of it. Then he placed the caterpillar's favorite food in the middle of the circle created by the caterpillar's procession around the rim of the flower pot. Each caterpillar followed the one ahead, thinking it was headed for their food. Round and round went those silly insects for 7 days. After a week of this mindless activity, the caterpillars started to drop dead because of exhaustion and starvation. All they had to do to avoid death was to stop the senseless circling of the flower pot and head directly toward the food less than 6 inches away. However, the processionary caterpillars were locked into this lifestyle and couldn't extricate themselves from this mindless behavior. If your life is on autopilot, you are like the processionary caterpillar, always circling a better life, unable to learn your way into that life. You need to learn your way out by recognizing the path that you're on. Why purpose outperforms panic. In survival training, you learn something surprising. People don't die in the wilderness just because they're weak. They die because they panic. We covered this in episode 1, the tragic story of Dr. McDonald, the lost radiologist, and how the STOP framework, stop, think, observe, plan, may have provided safe haven for him. Panic is what happens when there is no anchor. And panic just doesn't happen in the woods. It happens in your inbox, at your dinner table, at your news feed. Without an anchor, your perception narrows. You lock into reactive mode. And worst of all, you outsource your frame. You start letting other people define what matters. Here's the anecdote. Anchor is your reason for living, for being, for growing, for standing still when others run. It's not motivation. Motivation fades. It's meaning, and meaning stabilizes. Let me tell you about 2 stories of anchoring from my own life. In 2002, I had lost a pivotal high-tech job. To make ends meet, I worked as a TSA agent. I had 2 kids, one with serious medical needs, and I was living away from my family. I felt adrift, but I took a deep dive into self-examination. I started asking myself hard questions. Why was I doing what I was doing? What behavior was I using to cope? What payoffs was I getting? What was I really good at? And what was just survival? That brutal honesty became an anchor. And it didn't fix everything overnight, but it did give me some direction. Fast forward 13 years. I was commuting to work an hour each way, feeling stuck again. One day I asked myself, what am I good at? And I made a list. It was long, messy, full of insights, humor, failure, and trivia. But somehow in the chaos, I found one word that described my value. And that word was insight. That word became a lens, a learning frame, and it changed how I saw my role in the world. Every person you've ever admired, someone steady in the storm, has a learning frame. They may not call it that. They may not even know they have it, but it is there. The learning frame we are exploring in this series has 4 parts. Anchor, what grounds you when everything else shifts. Sight, what do you still see clearly when the world gets loud? Stance, will you react or respond with intention? And direction, are you drifting or moving with clarity? Today we talked about anchor. In my book, Learning Frames, How to Learn from Failure, I described the first steps in creating an anchor. Finding your purpose, understanding how perception shapes what you notice and how curiosity drives what you seek. Recognizing the ways you sabotage yourself, learning to pause before you move. Think of Mel Robbins' 5-second rule, the STOP framework that we've talked about, and Dr. Phil's life laws. Different names, same core idea. Finding a fixed point so when chaos hits, you don't lose your footing. To see the power of purpose, think back to 1903 and the race to conquer the skies. On one side, you had Samuel Pierpont Langley, wealthy, well-connected, funded by the War Department. He had the best minds, the best material, the prestige, but his aim was simple: be the first, be famous. On the other side, two brothers from Dayton, Ohio. No money, no government grants, just a small bicycle shop and a belief. The Wright brothers weren't chasing headlines. They believed that controlled, powered flight would change the world. Open it up, connect it, shrink it. On December 17, 1903, after years of trial, failure, and adjustment, they did it. They flew. Langley faded into history. The Wright brothers anchored themselves to purpose, and purpose carried them through every setback. Purpose is powerful medicine. It's the thing you hold when everything else shifts. It's the anchor you drop when the winds rise. So let me ask you something. What's holding you right now? When the world feels like it's tilting, what keeps you upright? Is it your faith, your family, a calling, or is it something you haven't named yet? Whatever it is, don't wait to define it, because the next storm is coming and your anchor won't appear by accident. In the next episode, we move to sight. What can you still see clearly when everything gets distorted? How do you tell the real from the engineered? And what lenses are helping or hurting you in this age of deception? Until then, take a breath, find your anchor, and remember, truth, or the framing of the truth, might bend, but you don't have to break.